My name's Charlie Martin. I'm a hill climber and a racing driver, and I'm from Leicestershire. My passion for cars and motorsport really began when I was about 8 years old. One of my best friends at school, his dad raced, and we used to go away at the weekends, and I just really loved actually being in the paddock with all the cars, surrounded by everything happening. So we used to do that from all the way through my childhood really, and then when I got a little bit older I started visiting some circuits in the UK to see some races like Donington, and then I also went to Le Mans 3 times for the 24-hour race. It was an incredible experience. So this is my current helmet. It's a Bell helmet, and there's a few things on this that are very personal to me. So for example, I've got the butterfly, which is an emblem that I've had for quite a few times in my logo. It's right here on the back with the Go Charlie, and also my kind of mantra that I tend to live and race by, which is your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. To me, it's that fact that everybody has their challenge, everybody has their things in life that inspire them and also that they want to do, and we should all get out there and try to do these things no matter what. So the thing that really first attracted me to hill climbing was the fact that I'd seen it when I was going with Hamish and his dad. And when I left university, Hamish was racing at this point himself. I think that gave me a lot of the motivation to think that, yeah, I could do this. And I knew it was something I really wanted to do. And so I was talking to Hamish and he said, well, my dad knows a guy with the perfect car for you. And it was a Peugeot 205. This guy had bought the car, started working on it, preparing it for racing, and then just lost interest. It had just sat in his garage for like 4 or 5 years. And so, yeah, I bought the car for £1,500. It had got a roll cage, it had got the MI16 engine in, but apart from that, it was just pretty much a shell on wheels. So it needed quite a bit of work doing to it. And I spent about a year doing all kinds of things. I mean, that was the first time I'd ever tried to take on a project, so I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of passion for it. So I just kind of learned as I went along. My family business, we had a paint and spray booth at that time. So I got someone to give me a lesson, and one weekend I got the car down there and sprayed the whole thing myself, and I did a pretty good job, I think, to be honest. So once I'd finished spraying the car, there was still quite a lot that needed to be done. And for example, there was no seat in the car. And this is back when eBay was still quite a sort of new thing, and you could still pick up bargains. And I got a really good full carbon Kevlar seat out of World Rally Car. I think I paid like £90 for it or something, which is pretty cool. So I put that in it and got some plastic windows, fiberglass boot and bonnet, and it was really a case of just every weekend chipping away at it. But I got it to a point where it looked pretty tidy, it was quite well finished. The time came around to do the first sprint, and I'd applied for a National B licence, which for hill climb is just something you send off in the post for, and that in itself was kind of cool. You send off, you get a race licence back, and you're like, oh, okay, that's good. So I was ready by the sort of autumn time, and there's a local sprint track to me called Kerborough, which is quite well known. And so I got the car, loaded it up on the trailer, all set. And my friend Hamish was racing the Morgan actually on the Saturday. My race wasn't until the Sunday. So this is the first time I'd ever driven the car as well. I'd not even driven it on the road because it wasn't road legal. So I'd not even turned a wheel in it. So you can imagine I was getting a little bit tense. The Saturday, I was passengering with Hamish in the Morgan, and he had a really good race, went really well, won his race. And that evening, we were celebrating, had a couple of drinks, maybe a couple more than I should have done. Got a bit excited. I didn't even get around to putting my tent up because it was just, it was kind of coming into winter. It was pretty cold, slept in the car. I woke up in the morning, next day, not feeling too sharp. And kind of not the best way to start your first event ever in motorsport, but the day went well. Following on from Kerborough, the next spring, it was time to go hill climbing, and I entered the Lowton Park Championship, and so I competed there for the season, and yeah, I did pretty well really. I was in a class where we were competing everybody who's in their first year, and I came second by the end of the year, and it was a lot of fun. This is my old helmet, and there's a real particular story with this. About 8 years ago, I was at Shelsley Walsh Hillclimb in England, and I met Derek Bell, who is of course the sports car and Porsche legend, very famous Le Mans driver, and for me a personal hero. Seeing him there was a bit of a hero moment for me, and I didn't have anything for him to sign. So I turned around and I said, "Hey, would you mind please signing my helmet?" And he very kindly wrote, "Charlie, good luck with the hills, Derek Bell." After 4 seasons racing the Peugeot, I knew it was time to move forwards, and the obvious step for me was to get into a rear-wheel drive car. So there was a really good class, which is all Westfields and Caterhams, and I made up my mind to buy a Westfield, which is a great car for power to weight, quite simple, but really good way to learn rear-wheel drive. So I went out and found one, and it looked like a pretty good car. I ran it, and the first year it was a bit of a nightmare because the guy had tried to do a lot of this setup himself in terms of the suspension, and it couldn't have been more wrong than the way it was set up. It was just, but I didn't realise at the time, and I fought with this car, and I just couldn't get to grips with it. It was, all I could get it to do was understeer. So at the end of that year then, the second season, it had to have a huge engine rebuild, which I think was on the cards all the time and I hadn't spotted. So it wasn't the best start with this car. And also around this time, I had something happening in my personal life, which was the fact that I'd always struggled with my gender identity. And I made the decision to transition. And this was something that was very relevant to me in terms of motorsport, because I used to do everything on the car. I used to run the car, spanner it, the whole thing. So I think I struggled to see how I was going to transition and carry on competing in the way that I was used to, and how motorsport would fit into my life as a woman. And at this point I nearly gave up racing altogether, and that was a really huge thing for me because motorsport is fundamental to who I am as a person. And I remember the first time I took a year out. I thought, I'm just going to see, and I was going to sell the car, and friends and family all said, "Look, you're crazy, just take some time and think about it before you do this, because it's what you love." And at the end of the year I went back just socially to see everyone, and I remember walking back into the paddock for the first time, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. I was absolutely terrified. And I'll always remember there was a handful of people that really made an effort to come back and welcome me. And I thought, this is going to be hard, but if I've got a few people with me who've got my back, then I can do this, and it's the right thing to do. And so I carried on. The next season I came back, and it was the best thing I ever did. And from that point onwards, I had 2 fantastic seasons in the car. I think personally I gained a lot of confidence. The engine rebuild, sorted the car out, I got the suspension done at the same time, and suddenly I just started really driving it, and I was getting good results. My 4th year competing in the Westfield coincided with me going to France for the first time, and I'd always watched videos of European hill climbing and thought it looked incredible, where they compete there on closed public roads, much longer races and really big atmosphere. And I'd heard about this event called Sangueno 10 years previously, and I'd always said, this is something I'm going to do. So I said, if there's one thing I do this year, it's going to be go to France. And we had an incredible weekend. Me personally, it was like a dream come true, because I just wanted to go to this event and compete. That was the objective. And I broke the class record by 2 seconds, and I won my class by 3 seconds. So in hill climbing, that's quite a big margin. I got home, and for weeks afterwards, all I could think about was, how do I get back to France? How do I go racing here? How do I do a whole season? And I started looking into it. and I got all these plans for the car, like putting a new engine in, and I suddenly found out you couldn't compete in a Westfield because it wasn't homologated for competition in France. So I was suddenly faced with this huge dilemma of what do I do? You know, if I want to go to France, I've got to change everything. If I stay in England, I'm not racing in France. And yeah, that was the point that I was at. So it was time to make a decision. So after thinking about it a bit, I had to make the decision. What am I going to do? Decision, go racing in France, of course. So I was like, right, I need to find a car, I need to find a van, I need to build a van. How long have I got? I've got about 6 months at this point. Yeah, okay, I think I can do it. So I went to MGR in Leicester, and they ran some Formula Renaults. I organised a meeting with the guy there, Mark Godwin, and we talked about it. So look, this is my plan to go to France on my own with a Formula Renault in a van. What are the cars like to run? Is this manageable? Is this a silly idea? Can one person do this on their own? And he kindly gave me quite a bit of his time, and I ended up buying a car from him. And then I went and found the van. Now this was just a Luton box van at this point in time, so it needed so much work doing. And by the time I got it sat here on my driveway, I had 4 months to get ready for the season. Okay, and I cracked on, and I worked day, noon and night, every weekend. I was pretty much broken by the beginning of the season, but I got the van done. You know, I had to get a low loader built on the back, get the car in, build a mezzanine floor, fit it with like a bed, shower, hot water, all these things. But, you know, I grafted really hard, and I got it ready. And at the beginning of 2015, I had my car, I had my van, I was ready to go hill climbing in France. So obviously these are some of the trophies that I've won over the last few years, and it's great to look back at these and be reminded of nice moments in my racing career. This one in particular, this is the first race that I did in France when I took the fastest lady in the Formula Renault. First time I got to try the Formula Renault was at Blyton Park in Lincolnshire, and it was March, it was cold, it was dry thankfully, but I was on some pretty old circuit tyres, they were pretty hard, and I just kept spinning the car a lot. By the end of the day I was getting heat in the tyres and it was clicking, but I think the morning I just, going around in circles quite a lot. And then from then I was pretty much straight off to France. And the first race, scrutineering, we were getting the car ready, and we found that part of the upright was missing, like a little retaining clip. So there was like this much play in the front upright, and suddenly I thought, oh, I can't believe this, you know, all this work, I've come all this way and I'm not going to be able to race in the end. But so everybody pitched in, a lot of French people just helped, got me running, and lo and behold, I took second in class and I took fastest lady. Amazing result, lovely debut to competition in France for the first time, and I was up on the podium, and it was very different to the podium that I know in England, which is more low-key, and there it was like a proper stage they built with, you know, the mayor and a lot of people, video cameras, and to be up on the podium that day after everything that had preceded it, all the hard work, people telling me, you're crazy, you can't do this. It was just a magical feeling, to be honest. I mean, I remember walking up and I got my overalls kind of a half unzip around my waist, and one of the guys was like, you know, pull your overalls up, you know, sorry. And I couldn't stop smiling. My first season racing in France was incredible. It was really like a dream. It was hard because every time I was doing much longer courses, and I had to learn everything from scratch, but an incredible experience. And one thing that happened that year is I got invited to compete at Saint-Ursanne-les-Rongiers in Switzerland by my friend Fabien Budubon. And this is a legendary hill climb. It's been running since something like 1926. Fastest hill climb in Europe. And it's very iconic because it has this huge viaduct that you pass under. And I'd seen this race hundreds and hundreds of times on YouTube. And for me, to be racing there in my first year of competition was, wow, I can't believe I'm at St. I turned up that weekend, it absolutely poured it down all weekend. I mean, it was soaking. And this whole course is 5th and 6th gear, pretty much the whole thing. It's flat out through a forest, scary course, in the wet, with the whole setting and the whole drama of being somewhere like this. And I think I was 3rd Formula Renault in class and fastest lady at an FIA European Hillclimb Championship round in my first season competing abroad. Again, dream result, I couldn't believe it. And yeah, for me it was, St. is always now a magical place. If you look on my race overalls, I have the Jurassian flag in a little heart because that's in memory of that event. In year 2, I had one of my most difficult situations, I think you could say, which was a huge crash at Villafon, and I went into the side of a mountain doing nearly 100 miles an hour and pretty much completely destroyed the car. It was really a situation where I raced at the end of the day, my last chance to go quicker, and the lighting conditions changed completely. So we had bright sunlight, really dark shade, and then sunlight, shade, and it's like when you come in and out of tunnels and you can't see for a moment, and that's just what happened when I was nearly flat in 4th gear coming into a corner. I turned in too soon, ran wide on the exit, and you know, it was really, really scary. And for me, it was a big thing to come back from. 4 weeks later, I'd left the car with the team in France, and I had a race in Germany for the first time ever, German round of the European Hillclimb Championship. And just to get to this race it was crazy. I had to get every conceivable form of transport across France, pick the car up, then 650 kilometres to Germany. And I really struggled the first time in the car, you know, sitting there with the engine running and all these thoughts going through my head about what am I doing racing? Why do I put myself through this? And I remember that weekend I met Timo Bernhard, the Porsche factory driver who won Le Mans this year. And he was a lovely guy. You know, some really nice talks with him. I think he helped me a lot to, I don't know, just focus on some good things. And lo and behold, I took fastest lady and 3rd in class. So coming back from 4 weeks previous, the biggest crash of my racing career, to being on the podium, stood there with, feeling like, this is why I race, this is why I love racing. It was a really incredible moment. In 2016, I had the first opportunity to race in a prototype. This was a dream for me because I love these types of cars. So it's a car with a 2-litre Honda Type R engine, a lot of downforce, sequential box with paddle shift, incredible car. And in terms of hill climb, it's really like the top level. I remember sitting in the paddock on the Friday and we were making the seat for the car. And people were coming up and saying, so you've not driven this car before? No, so we're making the seat. And you're going to drive it for the first time at St. Yeah. No pressure. And it went really well. This poster behind me was from Gernigel-Bergrennen, which is a Swiss hill climb I did last year in the Norma. It's in the most incredible setting up in the mountains. And competing there was really cool. But what was even cooler was winning the fastest lady prize and the diamond watch for fastest lady. Following on from racing the prototype, coming into 2017, that's the car I wanted to race. And also I'd been doing everything on my own for the whole two years in France. And it was a lot of hard work. It's really a bit of a struggle at times when you're managing everything. I got talking to my friend Sarah Louvet, and I said, look, I'm trying to get a prototype, I want to run in a team, and she was racing with Team Schatz competition. And so she set up a meeting with Nicola Schatz, the owner, and this was a really good start to everything that happened after that, which was me joining their team for 2017 and running for 9 or 10 races in the French Championship. Racing in the team for me is it's made such a difference to my performance. We started the season with two test days on a circuit and working with data logging, coaching, and For me, this year has been all about taking a much more professional approach to racing and having a team support, mechanics, people all around you who, they all know what they're doing. Everybody's playing their part, and me, just as a driver, I'm just there to get in the car, race, and focus on improving my times. In terms of ambitions for the future, I'm always somebody who's setting myself new challenges. For me, life without a challenge is kind of boring. I've always got to have the goals I'm working towards. So next year, one of my plans is to get into circuit racing. And so I've been making various inroads with that. An exciting development that's just happened recently is that I've got an LMP3 test coming up. And so that's going to be a big step up for me. But it's something I'm incredibly excited about and very much looking forward to. So I'm currently training pretty hard for that. Looking back over things, would I change anything? Maybe a couple of things. Certainly if I went back now, I could drive the Peugeot 205 a lot harder. I think I was far too gentle with that car. So that's certainly, I'd love a chance to go back and really drive it. Other things, one thing is I wish my mother had been alive to see me race the Peugeot. She helped me buy the car, and she was ill when I was working on it, and sadly she never got to see my first race. That's life, but yeah, that's one thing I sometimes think about.